Welcome to KOCT's Roundtable. My name is Kent Davey, and I'm your host for this important program to help you decide who should represent the 49th Congressional District. The primary election this June 7th will decide which of the two of the 7 candidates running for this post will face off in November. As you know, this year is a midterm election, so the president is not on the ballot, but the balance of power in Congress could change depending on your vote. Oceanside is in the 49th Congressional District, which is one of the hot races in the country. In other words, a lot of money is being spent by both Democrats and Republicans to gain control of this seat. It stretches from Orange County through Camp Pendleton to Solana Beach. To give you a little background, this district was part of the so-called Blue Wave in 2018 when Democrat Mike Levin defeated a Republican and turned what had been a Republican district for years into a Democratic one. But after recent redistricting, voter registrations are now evenly balanced, so this is a highly competitive race. You could receive a ballot in the mail anytime after May 9th, and you can mail that in if you want at any time after that until primary election day. Who's running? 5 Republicans and 1 Democrat are challenging Levin in his bid for a third term. In alphabetical order, their names are Lisa Bartlett, Brian Marriott, Hosea O'Neill, Chris Rodriguez, Nadia Smalley, and Renee Taylor. So stay with us for this edition of Journalist Roundtable. I'd like to welcome Oceanside City Councilman Chris Rodriguez. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris, tell us briefly who you are and why you're running.
My name is Christopher Rodriguez. I came to the San Diego North County region over 2 decades ago through the United States Marine Corps. I swore in after my 17th birthday. Shortly after boot camp, front lines of the Iraq War, I did 2 tours in Iraq, the first to Baghdad, second to Fallujah. I was injured in a firefight by an RPG that blew up next to my head. Because of those injuries, I wasn't able to re-enlist, and so I ended up getting out of the Marine Corps, and with no excuses, I started a small business right on Coast Highway, became very successful, and got involved with the business community, eventually as a part of giving back, running for office and serving the beautiful city of Oceanside since 2018. I am the only candidate that's running for the 49th that is actually from the San Diego portion of the district, which is the largest portion of the 49th. And I'm excited to be here and to represent this district.
Very good. There is a lot happening in the news right now, and I'd like to start off with a question that news broke yesterday that a draft opinion on reversal of Roe v. Wade has been released to Politico. That raises the question, do you think abortion should be limited to the first trimester? Should they be restricted more? Should they be allowed? What's your view on that?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I think that this leak is devastating to the integrity of our courts, the third branch of government. That needs to be investigated and prevented from ever happening again. We need our appointed Supreme Court judges to do their job and to weigh in on important issues that affect everyday Americans. We shouldn't have a Roe versus Wade. I think Congress has failed Americans and has not defined when life begins. The majority of Americans do not support abortion after the first trimester. That's been verified. 95% of institutional biologists state that human life begins in the womb. I think Congress needs to define when life begins and thus when protections of our United States Constitution should be applied.
So you'd like to see a federal law covering all 50 states on
Absolutely.
that? Okay. Also in the news, inflation for the last month was running at a hot 8.5% year over year. We're at a 40-year high on these kinds of numbers. Can Congress do anything about it to damp it down? Do you expect the economy to fall into a recession?
Yes, stop spending money and printing money. The inflation is not happening because of COVID and Putin. It's happening because of the one-party rule and the Biden administration's failed policies on the economy. They are spending too much money. Over 40% of all currency that's ever been printed in the United States has been printed in the last 18 months. And that's failed policy. We need to stop the mass spending, and we need to get back to basics and focus and prioritize immediate efforts to lower our gas costs, which is going to require energy independence. Failed policies by Biden on stopping the Keystone Pipeline and making America more dependent on foreign nations for our energy has caused a catastrophic effect in San Diego County. We have a high number of seniors on fixed incomes, but we're paying the highest electricity rates in the nation, some of the highest gases, the highest tax. We have the highest poverty rates. Poor policies and decisions by Democrats like Mike Levin is the exact reason we're experiencing what we are now.
Okay, average student debt is $39,000 a year right now. I believe there's something in the order of 41 million people in the U.S. carrying some sort of student debt. Median debt is $19,000. Average payment is $393 a month. Median payment is $222. Should student debt be forgiven? Would that be fair to non-college graduate taxpayers?
I think that we have a lot of far left progressive Democrats pushing that, especially during election time. We're in a society that has failed to teach young students and college students civics, financial planning. And so from a beginning education, public education, taxpayer-funded education, we have failed the next generation. And yes, student debts is a burden, but there's programs for deferment. And if we're going to forgive debts, it's going to devastate our economy. And does it stop there? What about individuals who just paid off their loans? Or what about individuals in the future that want to borrow to go to school? Or what about credit card debt or mortgage debt? Where do we stop on debt forgiveness? And that's what Democrats like Mike Levin fail to answer.
Okay. Biden administration has asked for another $33 billion in aid for support of the war in Ukraine. Is this a good idea? Is the U.S. in a proxy war with Russia?
I think that Biden needs to spend more time and energy focused on the crisis we have here in America and items that will benefit Americans. We have open border policies by Democrats like Mike Levin and Biden that is having an influx of fentanyl crossing our borders, getting into our communities, and causing crime. Before he wants to spend another dollar overseas, he needs to focus on the issues we have here on the ground and put Americans first.
Okay. Within the last week, the Biden administration announced that they intended to establish a disinformation governance board under the Department of Homeland Security. What do you think of that idea?
That is a complete violation of our God-given First Amendment rights. I think it's moving toward a communistic approach of a ministry of truth where government feels that they are the genesis of truth. And I think that we're in a day and age where government wants to be feared. And I appreciate Thomas Jefferson's quote that says, when people fear the government, there is tyranny. But when the government fears people, there is great freedoms. And that's why I'm running for Congress. I'm going to go fight to reinstitute that fear from government of the American people and get to work for them.
Okay. Part of that whole discussion leads to discussions over the last several years over whether or not 47 U.S.C. 230 should be amended. That is the statute that allows online publishers to be free from libel actions for third-party comments. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to anything government does, including our federal government, we need to do everything we can to protect free speech, and that includes, allowing the private sector to do what they do. However, when you see what's happening on platforms like Twitter, now that Elon Musk has acquired it, where you have conservative accounts gaining 20, 30% new followers, and you have left-leaning accounts losing followers, you have to ask the question, what sort of censorship and algorithms were in play to benefit one message over the other, and how did this cause consequence and chaos on the ground for everyday Americans? These are things that need to be debated and discussed, and we need to prevent censorship in mass public forums where we're debating issues of the day.
Does that suggest then that you think that organizations like, or companies like, private companies like Twitter or Facebook should be regulated by the federal government?
Subject to not violating our Constitution and our First Amendment rights. So everything, the measuring rod is, does this or does this not violate the constitutional right? If the answer is, does this or does this not violate free speech? If you don't know the answer, then you let it be.
Yeah, but how is that a role for Congress?
Because Congress is the legislator of the land. We established the laws, and our whole existence is to protect our constitutional rights. That's why we're in office. That's why we're there.
Okay.
That's why we swear an oath to that Constitution. That First Amendment right is there's 5 God-given inalienable rights. You have religion, speech, press, to assemble and to petition your government. Mm-hmm. God gave us those, not government, and government needs to protect them.
Yeah, okay. What I guess I'm wondering is, when you say it's Congress's role, do you have in mind then that somehow a federal agency should be putting a thumb on an organization like Facebook or Twitter when there are issues of potential censorship or canceling or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I think I'm a smaller government kind of guy, and I think that we need to let the private sector do what it does, but when the private sector is blatantly violating constitutional rights, or it's being questioned that they are, then I think Congress has a role to weigh in and legislate after we have healthy debate.
Okay. We'll go back to energy for a little while. California is sitting on an estimated oil reserves of 4 to 6 billion barrels of oil, another 5 to 7 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Should that be tapped?
So just a couple years ago, we were net exporters of energy. Now, through poor policies by Democrats like Mike Levin, who co-sponsored the Green New Deal, which would have devastated our economy, they're trying to approach it from an environmental standpoint that says, we're going to lower greenhouse gases, we're going to lower climate change, but what they're not telling you is their laws are going to cost everyday Americans on the ground hundreds of dollars a month because of those policies. And also what they're not telling you is when you import from other countries that are creating that same energy, 87% of the energy in America is non-renewable sources. That's from the Department of Energy 2020. When you are exporting that oil, that natural gas from other countries, they don't have the same environmental regulation. When they pump that oil or do their fracking for gas, they're causing 3 to 5 times more impact from our environment, for our environment, than if we did it here. And that's creating the global catastrophe that we're trying to fight. But Democrats think, oh, it's not done in our backyard, so it's okay. We accept that. And that's the problem I have. So with that history, I think we need to open up drilling on all federal lands. I think California drilling is under the sovereignty of the governor, and I respect state rights. So that would be up to the governor if he wants to bring relief to Californians on creating more supply so we can lower our gas costs.
But on just a practical basis, would you urge the governor to open up new leases offshore on California oil reserves?
I'm not aware of any new leases that are available, so I don't.
They are not currently available. California doesn't allow any new leases on offshore oil, but that's where most of that oil is reserved. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, that would be up to the governor. I respect the rights and sovereignty of a governor and of a state. And if Gavin Newsom wants to continue to raise gas taxes and have pushing $7 a gallon for his constituents, then he'll have to answer to them come Election Day.
Okay, the governor has signaled that he's at least thinking about delaying the closure of Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. keep it open or close it?
Absolutely keep it open. There is nothing wrong with that plant. It has a 15 to 20 year lifespan, safe lifespan as certified from the experts. That Diablo Canyon nuclear facility produces 10% of California's energy. It is net neutral. It is the cleanest energy possible, and it's rather safe. I think from a federal perspective, the issue at hand is when we have San Onofre, which is being decommissioned, there's nowhere to store that waste, that tons and tons of waste. And so I will author a bill that will designate federal lands as the United States designated area to take any and all nuclear waste from decommissioned nuclear facilities in the future. So we have a safe location, a plan, and funding in place to remove and decommission nuclear facilities across the United States.
Right now, there's about 3 million pounds of nuclear spent fuel rods sitting dry casking at San Onofre. Right now, would you then favor reopening the development of Yucca Mountain, which was the original federal storage site in Nevada that was closed down probably during the Obama administration?
I'm not too familiar with the close down or the reasoning of that federal facility being closed down. I do know we lack current federal oversight and assistance with situations like San Onofre. And so I think that we definitely cannot store it there. We need to get it out of our area into a safe location. But I also want to point out we're in a new age of technology, a new age of rocket technology. I think there's some capacities at some point in the future where this nuclear waste is sent off our world into a location far, far away, and we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Do you think that the federal government ought to encourage more siting of nuclear power plants now?
Absolutely. I think nuclear is safe. It is the risks can be mitigated, and it is a net neutral energy producer, meaning it doesn't have the impact on our environment, and it's supported by major Democrat, liberal organizations that advocate for it, and it's something I think that government needs to explore further to prepare for the future of energy costs and trying to do our part to protect the environment.
What else should the U.S. do with regard to battling or trying to avoid climate change?
Well, America has lowered our GHG, greenhouse gas creation, year over year. Meanwhile, countries like Russia and China and India have increased. We're a mere bystander. If we don't get on the same page as a globe, there's nothing we can do in America that will impact or offset climate change around the world. We have come a long way with technologies like safe fracking, which has lowered greenhouse gas creation. We have improved our automobile industry to include catalytic converters, which have, they release a lot less toxin into the environment. And electric cars are being more affordable. Right now, only the wealthy can afford an electric car. Only the wealthy get the tax rebates. We need to make these opportunities more affordable to everybody, and stop focusing policies that are making it hard for everyday Americans and Californians. For example, California's housing policies is so tied to protecting the environment that it is increasing the cost of construction and to the end user by 20 to 30%. And it's in the name of lowering greenhouse gases. And this is where the Democrat one-party rule in Sacramento is focused. Yet, the greenhouse gas creations from California's wildfires completely wipes out anything we save in our environmental housing policies. Mm-hmm. And so it's just this conflict, or greenwashing, what we call it, and failed policies that's doing nothing to help our environment, yet it's putting these costs on the middle class of California.
Right now, you mentioned something a bit ago that California has among the highest electricity price, residential electricity rates in the nation. We currently import about 25% of the electricity that we consume statewide. What would you do to either increase that amount that we produce ourselves or to lower those costs?
So the reason California and San Diego County in particular is experiencing exuberant cost increases is because California policy allows local jurisdictions like Oceanside or Carlsbad, local jurisdiction, to become a community aggregate, entity that pretty much becomes your electric company. And we are pushing out the private sector, like the PG&Es, the SDG&Es of the world. And the problem is the private sector knows and understands risk. They have private investors. They negotiate long-term contracts. When you start eliminating the private sector and growing government to take over the roles of the private sector, the costs go up, the long-term contracts go away, and you're paying a more expensive premium for shorter-term energy contracts, and that is being put on the backs of our seniors, of low-income families, of communities of color, of individuals that are struggling as it is right now. And it's those failed liberal policies that they're trying to bring to DC, and that's one of the reasons I'm running for office, is to stop these failed policies from spreading to the United States.
There are, to change the topic a little bit, there are approximately 11 million undocumented people currently residing in the U.S. There are a fairly sizable number of people that are queuing up in Mexico and south of there to try and come into this country. What should we do about the border?
We need to secure our border. We cannot be a sovereign nation without having a secure border. We have over 330 legal ports of entry. My family came here from Mexico City area. I'm a Mexican American. I love this country. Individuals that want to immigrate here, they're not coming here to go to Disneyland. They're coming here because they want to achieve the American dream and the opportunity of the greatest country in the world. But we need to make it clear. If you come here illegally, there is consequences. We must secure our border using all methods possible and stop the drugs from invading our communities, stop the sex trafficking. And there are individuals, there are 7 individuals right now on the most wanted list that have recently crossed our borders. Who knows how many unknowns that are causing chaos and organized crime in our communities. The number one thing we need to do is secure our borders. The
House last year passed the American Dream and Promise Act of 2021, which would have given residency status, and a path to citizenship for approximately 2 million Dreamers. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on what was done in the past. What I do know is there are individuals who are born here. They have integrated into our society. They love this country. And, we can't talk about amnesty, which is what you're discussing, without first securing our borders. If we put the cart before the horse, we are sending a signal to the world to come to America before they close it up. We must secure our borders, then we can have a conversation about the individuals that were born here, and the 11 million illegal immigrants that are currently in our country.
Well, the 2 million I'm referring to are they, by the definition, were children brought here, born elsewhere out of the country, brought here, but raised in a U.S. society, basically as Americans, except they don't have the status. And those are the people I'm curious, what do you do about those?
We have a debate and a conversation through a bill on and a funding source to secure our borders and establish pathways to citizenship after our borders are secure.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit ago the opioid crisis, death toll from opioid and fentanyl addiction have reached about 100,000 deaths annually here in the U.S. It's a major factor to homelessness. What should be done?
Secure our borders. We need to secure our borders. That's how it's getting here. It's illegally coming across our borders. The cartels know the game. They know the weakness of the Biden administration and his policies. They have taken over the avocado industry in Mexico, the cartels. They are infiltrating every aspect of Mexico to get as much of their product across our borders, because they're in it to make money. and it's causing destruction. And the Biden administrations and Democrats like Mike Levin have an open border policy. They want as many people to come in, and they don't care about the drugs, they don't care about the sex trafficking, they don't care about the young children that parents died along the way that are stranded, and you know, now they're going to be orphans. They only care about getting as many individuals in the U.S. illegally as possible.
Okay, since at least the aughts, I guess, federal policy on funding, federal policy and funding on dealing with homelessness has followed a housing first model. That does not require that participants in their programs be engaged in mental health treatment or addiction treatment prior to being housed. Do you agree with the housing first model?
So the housing first model is best equipped for about 20% of the current homeless population. Those are individuals who are physically disabled, permanently mentally disabled, not substance-induced mental illness. They have refrigerated medicine. They're talking to the trees. You know, they have schizophrenia. That's about 20% of the homeless population. And the 80% of the homeless population there's drug addiction, there's, you know, primarily drug addiction, and then there's all other categories on that other 80%. When government spends money, and it's your tax dollars, we need to focus our resources on an 80-20 model. 20% can go through the housing first. Let's get you into a house. Let's get you the resources you need. No questions asked. But we have a model in California and the federal government that says everyone that's homeless, 100% of the population, we're going to try to build tax subsidized affordable housing, and we're not going to keep any accountability, and we're going to lock a problem behind a closed door and call it success. It's not sustainable.
Okay, we're basically out of time, so a couple of really quick questions. If there is a scale in the GOP that ranges from Mitt Romney to Donald Trump, where are you on that scale?
I'm a center-right Republican and conservative, faith, family, hard work.
Okay. Yes or no? Should congressmen be allowed to trade stock?
No.
Angels or Padres?
Chicago Cubs.
What book is on your bedstand?
My Bible.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate the conversation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching KOCT's Roundtable. Remember, your ballots should have arrived in the mail, and you have until June 7th to either mail them back to the registrar, drop them off at a drop-off location, or go into the polling place on Election Day. I'm Kent Davey. Thanks again for watching KOCT, the voice of North County. And remember, every vote counts.
KOCT, the voice of North County.